Admiralty Board, on behalf of the Defence Council, having directed that Her Majesty's ship Manchester is to be commissioned at Portsmouth on the 16th of December 1982, or as soon afterwards as circumstances permit, you are to proceed forthwith to commission her for sea service. On commissioning, you will be under my full command. You are to bring to my immediate notice and to the notice of the appropriate local authority anything which gives you cause for dissatisfaction with the ship or any part of her, and any other matters of import to the welfare of the ship's company. May God's blessing be upon the ship and the company, hereby entrusted to your command. And may your joint endeavours to uphold the high traditions of the Royal Navy in the service of Her Majesty the Queen
This year, some 12 new ships and submarines joined our fleet. The first nuclear submarine of the Trafalgar class. The first stretched Type 42 HMS Manchester, some 50 feet longer than her sister ships, and as it happens, some 1.5 knots faster than her sister ships with a similar power plant.
HMS Manchester, our latest destroyer, joins the fleet. Her design, in fact, dates from the 60s, and she's ended up costing £120 million. The government say that's too much. Not sold any overseas, and that is disturbing. But few around the world dispute that for the arduous anti-submarine role they're designed for, and few other navies need to do it, ours are superb long time. And for the future, there's more at stake than the £1.5 million of taxpayers' money that the Giles team may get in a contract to take their design to the final stage. Even if the Navy successfully argues against the S-90, that may turn into a Pyrrhic victory for the Navy's designers. The very question marks raised over their design for the Type 23 show how far this emotional battle has gone. It's put the whole system of naval shipbuilding and design under such intense scrutiny that this government seems certain to demand changes. And what they want to change is so fundamental to the Navy's tradition that it's unlikely to be settled without further mighty broadsides all round. The trouble is that industry and the Navy between them have been producing graceful ships that break the budget. That threatens the size of fleet that Britain can afford. So ministers have been looking around for a cheaper alternative. And for the first time, they're listening to a rank outsider. And that, to the Navy, is an insult to its 100-year tradition of designing its own ships. Personal confrontation over the design of ships between the Navy's ship department at Bath and the S-90's small-time design firm. Both sides believe that each is out to sink the other. The row is at the heart of the Navy's role in NATO. Destroyers like Manchester have two Concorde jet engines for the massive acceleration required chasing Russian submarines in the North Atlantic.
After 6-4, take traffic car 102 102.
But it's the Star Wars scene below deck that gives the true feel and meaning of the modern warship. It's here, and not on the bridge, that the captain directs the electronic battle.
1025.
Some computers are so complicated that sailors say it takes 3 years to find out how to maintain them properly. But all the banks and banks of computers that make up what the Navy call the weapon systems packages fill out more and more space deep into the heart of the ship. And that too has its limits in the amount of firepower that can be carried. This is what's provoked the row over traditional design. Should ships still put so much emphasis on the extra knot of speed, then what they really need to be is a bigger container for the electronic systems down here below decks and a platform for the weapons above them. The Sea Dart surface-to-air missile is the ship's biggest punch, designed to knock out attacking aircraft. His 4.5-inch gun looks antiquated. John Knott, when Defence Secretary, complained that our ships carried too little weaponry, considering how sophisticated and expensive they were. And although this gun is also computer-controlled and fully automatic, the question remains whether the ship is still under-armed. Manchester is off to the Falklands later this year, with some lessons learned mainly in procedure, but so far no changes made to basic defects like escape hatches, which were too small to get through with breathing apparatus on. They'll have to wait. The big design row is not about our past Falklands performance, but about the future needs of ships to be better able to protect themselves. And that's the hottest issue in the argument over the rival designs.
An old sea dog that you are.
My dear King Neptune, it is with great alacrity that we welcome you and your force. Quite mighty men you met. You are guests for as long as you are on board, and the shorter time the better. And all our felicitations to you and your family.
Thank you. Please away from me. The Lord of Tide, the monarch of the watery deep, whose laws the whales and fishes deep. Here on this forecastle I declare, for fellows fine and ladies fair, our court is open, and all our honoured rules of sport shall be obeyed. Let shift be short. To any who dare transgress the proper speech, the proper dress, if one offend the rule of mine, though 20 times cross our line, he crossed upon our Oslo main, our bears shall have him once again. And treated worse than novice he, shall by those bears and barbers be. Therefore beware. And now our rule of court decrees the grant of freedom of our seas. To all who are not yet got that rank, by ordeal of suds and attack. Let them get ready, and this the order in which they shall be presented. Here today, the captain, and then the staff, the wardroom officers and big, the gunroom with the mighty men, the warrant's view, I think of these, the chief and the FPO, and then the rest of the crew. We've worked our weary way right through. So, stand by, surgeon, stand by, barber, stand by, bears.
marks the minefields. If you should see this sign from that side, you are in the minefield.
It's also part liaison with other armed services. Top brass from the Army and Air Force have been involved, along with the rising young stars from the staff colleges. And with us on the very latest stretched Type 42 destroyer, HMS Manchester, were naval attachés from countries as far away as India and Ecuador. The Russians weren't invited to the show, but they came anyway, in a trawler strung with more aerials than they need to listen to Radio Moscow. All good shows go with a bang. So when the Russian spy ship was sufficiently far out of range, the Manchester's 4.5-inch gun opened up and lobbed a few rounds at the horizon, about 14 miles away. The flash protection issued was nothing new to the naval attachés, but it brought out the schoolboy in them once their gold braid was covered. Then the 20 and 30mm anti-aircraft guns loosed off tracer at a target flare, rattling the eardrums even inside a pair of air defenders. The Sea Dart missiles weren't fired, but as part of the razzmatazz we were given a demonstration of razzing. Replenishment at sea, or RAS for short, is the precarious means of getting supplies from the Royal Fleet auxiliaries, in this case resource, onto the fighting ships. Swinging a Sea Dart missile across the gap in an oversized cigar box as the two vessels line up at a steady 16 knots is no easy task whether you're on the deck or on the bridge. The Sea Darts are for knocking out aircraft, like the Phantoms, which flew 600 miles from Lucas in Scotland to launch a mock attack. Had it been for real, we were assured, they'd have been detected over Newcastle. The radar missile guidance system would have locked onto them over the Midlands, and they'd have been destroyed somewhere over Reading.
A decommissioned destroyer was used as the target in the exercise, which the Ministry of Defence has claimed as a success. Our defence correspondent Christopher Wayne reports.
24 years ago, HMS Devonshire was the Royal Navy's first guided missile warship. Normally, she'd have ended her days in the breaker's yard, but she was saved from that fate in order to prove the hitting power of the new Sea Eagle missile. Carried under the wings of Royal Navy and RAF jets, the Sea Eagle is computer-programmed and radar-guided. It cannot be decoyed or jammed, and it would have hit Devonshire even if she'd been going flat out instead of lying at anchor. The Defence Ministries say that if the Hulk had been fully armed and fueled, that one missile would have been enough to sink her. As it was, Her Majesty's submarine Splendid was on hand to deliver the coup de grace with a Tigerfish torpedo. Tonight the ship lies in water several thousand feet deep.
13 miles of the Berwickshire coast to play cat and mouse with a NATO naval exercise. Alan Mackay reports on this close encounter with the destroyer HMS Manchester.
As the first Russian spy ship arrived to snoop on Royal Navy manoeuvres, even a helicopter winchman felt he had to do his own surveillance. And at the bridge of the destroyer Manchester, the commander's anger was building up.
He turned in front of us deliberately, and he's now crossed slowly in front of us from one side to the other and slowed down. And it is interesting to see whether he will stay where he is or whether he will allow us to go through. But under the rule of the road, I have a right to carry on as I am, and it is up to him to keep out of my way.
But the Russian would not give way, and it took a noisy blast from Manchester to remind him of that international rule of the road. Cat and mouse tactics are familiar now to the Royal Navy when expensive firepower is on display. This joint maritime exercise brings together 30 warships and support vessels, British numbers augmented by NATO's Atlantic Fleet, themselves heading for a North Sea exercise. But it was the Russian attempt to foul up the delicate ammunition exchange which had angered Manchester's commander the most. It's one of many joint manoeuvres designed to test the response to an enemy attack. The Russians, too, will be able to view air defense operations, a major role for the aircraft to pull moving targets around the sky. Royal Navy commanders described the Soviet airstrike power as horrific in its strength. So if it was ever necessary, how effective would their response be?
This ship is equipped to deal both with the manned bomber and with the missile. And if today had been a missile raid, we like to think that we would have detected them in time to have been able to have certainly shot some of them down with our Sea-Dart missile system.
It's 8 o'clock in the evening and the men of Manchester are still at work, despite the fact that they were up at 7 o'clock this morning to leave port. These exercises are not the most popular activity in the Navy, but the men are committed. Manchester is away from home for 300 days a year. Even in World War II, destroyers steamed only for 150 days. So life in the Navy is changing.
The old days when you had a nice steady commission for 2 years, 2.5 years, with stacks of manpower, was a real dream compared to the battles that we have at the moment. With successive defence reviews, this has been cut down as more and more attention is put on to keeping the teeth going and cutting back the tail. But very regrettably, the cutting back of the tail for the sailor means that he spends less time ashore. And I'm noticing the effects of that on board this ship.
So even on operations, today's naval commander finds time to fire a shot across the bows of the Ministry of Defence, as well as at moving targets.
Gentlemen, the team will now go into their display. Please do not encroach upon the lines, you could get injured. Away they go. Turning outboard, and drop to the side. Turning forward. Here's a dangerous trick now. Hope you've enjoyed yourself. Haven't got too hot. We've got... the pilot is in the stocks again, I hear. So we're going to carry on. Anyone who wants to throw sponges, buy books, buy gophers, they're still open for you. Carry on.
Get behind the... You want to go to Yeovil? No. You want to go to Yeovil? No.
Hang on there.
Two, Gilly.
Hey, it's like riding ships on the oceans of the world, this. A bit like the same motion. No, it's 20p a ride. What's up? Who's got a Zenith? You know what, Zenith? Oh!